my apartment right now. It's ice cream time, apparently. All right. So, welcome to our session called The Choice is Yours. I know, and it's a nice day too. We have a playground right across the street from my apartment. So, that's where we get a couple ice cream men like to stake out and sell lots of ice cream. But welcome to The Choice is Yours. So this session is all about choice boards, which you may have learned before. You may have heard that term before. They're often called learning menus as well. So in this session, we're going to take a look at what a choice board is, and you'll be able to see some examples. A little introduction of myself is I am Tiana Mohandro. I teach 8th grade science and MESA, which is Math, Engineering, Science Achievement at LSSL Middle School. And I'm going to be going into my 9th year teaching. It's the 9th year at the same site, 9th year teaching overall, and 9th year in the same classroom too. And I saw earlier in the chat, we have quite a few science teachers, which is awesome because I'm going to have a couple of science examples. I also have some non-science examples too of different types of choice boards. But for science, you'll get a kind of sense of some things we do here at least my site in 8th grade, and hopefully what the students will come prepared with when they get to you guys, because there's a lot of high school science teachers. So objectives, we're going to learn about choice boards, what exactly they are, and then you'll be able to have some time at the end for you to start creating your own choice board for a topic, something that you can use for next year. So I'm hoping that we'll have enough time at the end of the session to give you that sandbox time to kind of play around. And I have developed a resource to help you kind of structure and figure out your choice boards, because they can be a little overwhelming because there's no set template for choice boards. It's very up in the air. So sometimes it can be just a little overwhelming to start figuring out. So I have a resource I'll share with you to help you out. If you have any questions at all during this presentation, you can go ahead and either raise your hand if you want to use the raise hand feature, and you can unmute and ask your question. Or if you just want to type it in the chat, you're more than welcome to type it in the chat and I can answer it from there. I am also going to I'm going to enable the Q&A. If you have a question that pops up that maybe you don't need answered at the second, but by the end of the session, you can put it in the Q&A and I can answer it at the end. But most of the questions that pop up tend to be in the moment. So you can either raise your hand or just type your question in the chat and I will be sure to answer it. All right. So what exactly is a choice board? Well, the general definition is just a graphic organizer. That's all a choice board is. It's taking a graphic organizer, something you're already familiar with, but the key component is you're giving students choice. You're giving them different ways either to learn about a particular concept or a different way to demonstrate their understanding. I like to group choice boards in one of the 3 categories. Now, this is nothing official. There's no book. There's no website that I'm citing. This is just in my brain. This is kind of how I group them. For me, choice boards are the purpose is either for learning, to demonstrate mastery, or for an extension on a topic. That's kind of how I like to think about them because that guides how I make my choice boards. So we're going to look at each one of those 3 aspects, and I'm going to show you some examples. So choice boards for learning, this allows students to explore various sources of information in order to create some type of final product or outcome. So you can have different videos or articles, you can have interactives, you can have infographics, different websites, blogs, whatever it is, any resource that you can think of, you can put on a choice board. The key for this one is the students have different variety of options to choose from. You can have them look at 1, 2, 5 different sources. You can tell them they only need to cite 1, or you could tell them they need to take information from 2 of the 5 choices and put them together for whatever that final product or outcome is. So for this, you tend to have different ways of learning, but it all funnels down into one final product or one final task that they're going to do with that information. So an example that I have is, this is something I created for advisory, because I somehow got roped into being in charge of the advisory committee last year. So this is a lesson that I created for all the students for advisory. It's just on stress management. So the students had a clear task that they need to do, and by the end, they just had to fill out a Google form. So every student, no matter what they looked like, their whole end game was to just fill out a Google form. And for those of you who are at Salinas High School, you actually have your PBIS team does a fantastic job with these. I've seen a lot of different lessons, a lot of different choice boards, particularly from your PBIS team, that does the same thing, where the students will have maybe like a video to watch, and then they get to explore different options, and then they fill out a Google form at the end. That's all this is. So taking a look at this choice board, I'll show you kind of what it looks like, the example. It has the directions in the middle, and then it has all of these different tasks or all these different areas that they can explore around the edges. And they can click on the one that they want to learn more about. So we watched this video about stress, and then the students had some time, and maybe the students really want to know more about guided meditation. So on this one, they can just click those words, guided meditation, and it brings them to a slide with more details. So it has different resources and playlists and mindfulness stuff that they can take a look at, or even some TED Talks videos. And let's say they explored that, and that's all they had time to do. Awesome. They have one new skill for stress management. If they have more time, they can always go back to the main menu and pick another one. Now, you'll notice I use Google Slides for this particular choice board. And the reason why I like Google Slides for this is because I gave the students the publish link. So this is exactly what they see as full screen. They never can see the editing version. So you're not going to get overwhelmed with all the different choices. It might be a lot to see all of the slides on that little toolbar on the side in a Google Slides. But seeing this, there's only the one. And if you look down here at the bottom, there's only that one slide. They can't click next. They only can see the title slide. So using Google Slides like this can be very beneficial, because looking at the slide, I just see a couple of words and I can choose the one that sticks out to me. Maybe listening to music is a skill I want to look at. And then it takes them to more information. So this is a good way to organize and have the students not be overwhelmed with all of the choices. Now, to show you kind of the editing side, so you can see what that looks like, is all I have is this title slide. And then for each one of these words, I created a slide to the side and I linked it. So right here, slide 2, I linked where it says gratitude journaling, and that's where I put my more information. When you skip the slides, so just right click, you can click skip slide. That's when you're in presentation mode, is not going to show that slide. So when the students get the publish link, it only shows the presentation slides. So they're not going to see all of the slides off to the left side like this. They're only going to see it full screen, and it kind of minimizes distractions. So that's one benefit about using Google Slides like that for a choice board. So the end goal for those is to just fill out a simple Google form. I think it was like 3 questions, and that was it. So they had different tasks that they were looking at, different things they could explore, but ultimately everyone did the same thing at the end, which was fill out that Google form, ticket out the door. So that's kind of the overview of choice boards for learning. Were there any questions, or what questions do we have about choice boards for learning before we move on to the next one? Okay, sounds good. So the next one is choice boards to demonstrate mastery. This is kind of the opposite. So for learning, you have multiple choices that all funnel down to one final task. For this one, yes, I'm going to post the slides. So if you've opened the slides presentation that I linked, where it says stress management choice board is linked to that. And then at the end, I'm going to share the link for these slides so you can see like the, all the notes and stuff like that. And I have everything linked as notes. I just didn't want to do that and then have everyone start clicking through the links at the bottom in the notes and get distracted. But the choice board to demonstrate mastery is kind of the opposite. You have one topic, you have one question, you have one thing that the students need to know and need to understand, but how they do that is where the choice comes in. So they have one concept, and then they have a variety of different ways that they can demonstrate their understanding or demonstrate their mastery of that topic or that concept. So in 8th grade science, or actually before we get to that, my first example for this, I have 2 examples for this. My first example is something that's very generic. It's just to show what you know bingo. And I'll let you know, I found this online, and then I just kind of added more things and made it my own as I went. So I can't claim full credit for the show what you know bingo. You'll probably find that template somewhere out there, but I've added more things as I've come into more tech tools throughout the years. So this is something very generic, but it can be used for multiple projects. So for example, whatever your project is, the students have to have a report about whatever topic. You can tell them they're going to do some research, they're going to find information, and then how they present that, that's where the choice comes in. That's where they can use the show what you know bingo, where they can look at this and they can choose which tech tool they want to use to show their information. Maybe they want to make a Padlet and kind of do like a little web board or something, or like a thought map. Maybe they just want to do a Google Slides presentation. Maybe they want to make a Flipgrid video. Maybe they want to do a Powtoons. So there's a lot of different choice here in how they demonstrate that knowledge. So this is something very generic that can be used for multiple lessons. So it's not something that you're creating every time. You can attach it to something you already have and say, hey, your final product needs to be attached in Google Classroom, which is the note that I have at the bottom, because students always forget that. And it will take time to show them how to attach things. But once they get it, they will. And you can even take it a step further if you really want to make it a bingo, and you can tell them they can only pick things that are, vertical, diagonal, or horizontal from the first one. So let's say they decide to make an Adobe Spark video the first time around. Now they can only choose something that's, maybe the next time they have to choose like a Prezi, a Flipgrid, or a Pictochart. And then the next time they had, 2 choices, and so on and so forth. So you could make it a bingo. I've had some teachers suggest that, maybe see if you get the kids to do a blackout or 4 corners, whatever the variations of bingo there are. I know there's a lot. So this is just something that can be used multiple times. So it's not adding any more to your plate that's already pretty full, but it's still giving the students that choice. Maybe sometimes they just want to, film that video and talk through it. Maybe sometimes they don't just want to make a presentation and they don't want to actually have to do anything with it, but just turn in those slides. Maybe they just want to make an infographic, whatever it is. You can also make these choice boards specific to a topic. So this is a weekly assessment that my team did for distance learning, and something that we'll probably be keeping into the new school year. We called it weekly assessment. We did not do this particular one every week. We had some type of assessment. This one we probably did maybe about 4 or 5 times throughout the semester. It wasn't every single week, but it was one of our weekly assessments that we did do. So this one, we had all the students need to answer a question. In this case, it was, what is Newton's first law of motion? And how they answered that question was up to them. They had 3 options. They could make a Google drawing, they could write a paragraph, or they could record a video. And for each one of these, we gave requirements of what needed to be included in that, as well as links to any resources that they might need. So, for example, with Loom, we had links to the Loom extension, so students can download that if they didn't have it. And then we also had down below those video tutorials. And you'll notice in that show what you know bingo, I also had video tutorials for each one of those tech tools. And those were not tutorials that I made. Those were ones that were already recorded and I found on YouTube. So you don't need to do extra work. You don't need to think that you need to be making all these tutorials for the students. Sometimes you can find some really good ones online that works, and then that's less work you have to do. So the students had requirements for each one, and then below is where they got to have their options. If they want to do the Google Drawing, we had this Google Drawing provided for them. Writing a paragraph, we did provide some sentence frames. And then recording a video, we had sentence frames as well as, and that video tutorial of how to use Loom. And then we were doing a standards-based grading. That was our first attempt at doing standards-based grading last semester. So we also included the rubric at the bottom. So this was great for the students that maybe they just wanted to write and they didn't want to do anything else. They can just write a paragraph. They're really good at that. They can crank out a paragraph and they don't feel so overwhelmed. Some students really like that Google Drawing, and they would spend the entire class period making their Google Drawing absolutely perfect so we can understand it and they can get all their points. And then some students did the video and they can map out their information in that video, and that helped them, especially for the students that weren't strong writers but could speak and could talk about what it was, what that concept was that they understood. So I do have a few student examples with this one. They're not all Newton's first law of motion. Actually, two of them are the history of Earth assessment. So the first one you can just see is the paragraph. It's very simple, had them highlight vocabulary words, very easy to grade. The next example on this is one of the Google Drawings. And Google Drawing is probably the least used feature out of all the Google apps, but it's probably one of my favorites. What's great with Google Drawing is you can just put it right into a doc. So all you have to do at the top is click Insert, Drawing, and then New. And it will insert a Google Drawing right there in the document. I usually put a text box that says double click here, so the students will see where it says double click here, and then they know that's where the Google Drawing is. It'll take some practice for the students to get used to it, but as you can see, they can produce some really awesome stuff using just text boxes and shapes. These are all just boxes of different layers of sediment. She's got different shapes that represent fossils, and then she's got her labeling of where the youngest and where the oldest fossils are found, which was what we were learning about that week. So it's something very simple, can be very powerful, but it's very underutilized. Yes, I can share that. Copy it from above. There you go. So this, as you can see, is just boxes that she colored different colors and then added some shapes on top. And that's it. And then we did have a few students, not too many. They were a little shy last year with, always being online, but we did have some students who recorded some videos. So she had a little GIF that played and she explained how it represents Newton's first law of motion. So this gives that students that choice. And what's great with that assessment is it's very, structured. So it's easy to just change a couple of things. When we wanted to reuse this 3 weeks from this one, all we had to do was change the guiding question and then the vocabulary and maybe update some of the sentence frames, but we kind of kept pretty generic sentence frames, so not too much. And that was about it. Everything else could remain the same. So it was a very easy assessment. The students got a choice in how they were doing it, and whichever was comfortable with them. And this is something that we're definitely going to be continuing into next year. Maybe if the students don't want to record a video, they can just come back to our desk and they can explain it to us verbally to give them that choice. But this one was an awesome one, and it was actually created by Susana Contreras, who was one of the CSUMB co-teachers that one of our teachers had at our site. And I'm happy to say that she will be teaching at Alisal High School next year. as one of the science teachers. So I think there's a science teacher from Alisal in here. So congratulations, you are getting an amazing teacher. Susanna brought a lot to the table, and you can see the kind of quality of work that she's done. It was very impressive that this was created by a CSUMB student. Yeah, so she is fantastic. And that's kind of the overview for the choice board for mastery. Were there any questions, or what questions do we have about those types of choice boards? All right, excellent. So we're going to go into choice board for extension, and then I'm going to go through some resources that I've provided for you and hopefully have some sandbox time at the end. So the last one is choice boards for extensions. These are really great options for students who finish early. So if you have those students who are always done maybe 10 minutes before class every day and you're not quite sure what to do with them, or maybe they just really are kind of over helping out other groups because they have to do that every day, having a couple finish early choice boards or extension choice boards can be really helpful. They can continue to learn about a particular standard or topic, even if they've completed the task or the assignment for that day. So you can see here this little graphic organizer that I have. So they finish their classwork or their assessment, whatever it is they're doing that day. For my class, first choice is always missing work. If they have missing work, that's what they're working on. And if not, that's where I bring in those choice boards for extension. And then they have different options of what they look at. So this one is an example of Connect 4, and this was created by Christopher Caliso, who is one of our science and AVID teachers. And this was based on AVID strategies that he used, and we made kind of a Connect 4 board for students who were done early as a review before state testing, back when we thought state testing was going to happen last year. So it started with just some videos. So students picked a topic that they weren't as familiar with, or maybe they didn't remember, either from 7th or 8th grade, because this was supposed to be a review for testing. And then they can choose an activity. And this one is a Connect 4. So much like the bingo, they had to make either a vertical, diagonal, or a horizontal line in one of these processing activities. So they can choose which one. And then below is where they actually did that. So they told me the name of the video, which processing activity they chose, and then they had a Google drawing embedded here where they can do whatever processing it was. So and this one has examples that are linked for each one, but they had choice in what topic they were learning and what topic they needed to kind of brush up on. So maybe the student chose rock cycle because they just completely forgot rock cycle for some reason or another from 7th grade. So they watch that video, and then they can look here and decide what it is that they want to create. Maybe they want to compare and contrast 2 different rocks from the rock cycle. And then they would create that as in their first box. And then from there, they can either do a Connect 4 vertically, or they can do a Connect 4 horizontally. So they had the other activities chosen for them, basically. And then they would pick a second video, a third, and a fourth. So this is something that can be done easily. If a student finishes, they can finish these. And when they Connect 4, maybe they get extra credit or reward in some way for this. You can also have extension choice boards that maybe aren't so content related. So this is a choice board that I worked on pretty much all of last year. It was continuously ongoing. It started out with like 8 or 9 things on it, and then it slowly became bigger and bigger each time I stumbled across cool tech stuff. So this is a finish early choice board. So for students who have absolutely no missing work to work on, maybe they don't want to help out other groups because they do that all the time, I gave them this option to pick something from this finish early choice board where they had tons and tons and tons and tons of different resources they can choose from. And I try to get things that all students would like, no matter what their interests were. So if they wanted to read a book, that was always my first choice, getting those students to read. But maybe they wanted to learn something that wasn't necessarily related to the class. So typing was a big one. Didn't mean to click that. Typing was a really popular one the students enjoyed, that they would learn to type, and I could see they were becoming a lot better throughout the year the more they played it. If they wanted to learn to code, I had some resources on there, or even just having Google Arts and Culture where they can explore different places and museums. And it just slowly grew throughout the year. Like my virtual field trips box, it started with just a document that had some field trips on it, and then I started adding more, like Google Treks, Animal Live Cams, and then Atlas Obscura, which is absolutely fantastic. If you have not checked it out, it's basically all of the weird stuff in the world, and it shows you the world map with all sorts of stuff, and you can kind of explore and see what there is out there. So this is a really good option, even having different art projects if students just want to draw at the end, because sometimes it is tiring. And especially last year with distance learning, I saw that the students would definitely get burned out a lot. So just having something that's maybe not academic, but still helpful to them. This virtual calming room, Haley put this together last year. She's the PBIS coordinator for the district, and it was absolutely fantastic. The students really liked it, and it helped them to learn what kind of stress management strategies really worked for them. And then eventually I added that stress management choice board I went over earlier. So they're still learning something, but maybe it wasn't so academic. Maybe it was just something that they were interested in. So for this particular choice board, I did have posted on my Google Classroom. So in Google Classroom, I have one material link at the very top of the class page that says important class information. And on that material, I linked things like the schedule, the syllabus, class expectations, and I also did this finished early choice board on there. I also linked it at the bottom of all of their assignments. So at the very bottom, it had like a stop sign, or it said, you're finished the assignment, you can work on missing assignments. If you don't have missing assignments, click here to go to the choice board, and a little stop sign to let them know that they were at the bottom, they were done. So other choice boards, for example, the weekly assessment one that I wanted them to actually type and do something on, I would post that as a class assignment. So the students would get a copy and they would type on it, and then I can grade it in Google Classroom. So it just depends on the choice board. But this particular one, I gave them the link so they can explore. And that's why I do a lot of the publish to web for a lot of these ones, because we noticed that if I gave this link to one of my coworkers, they couldn't post it in Google Classroom as like a material because they were not the owners of that document. But if they made a copy and I changed some things and I added some stuff, then they didn't have that on their own copy. So we did this published one so they can just post this published link, and Google Classroom was fine with that. But for some reason, just posting as like a view only link, it won't let you unless you are the owner of the document, which is kind of a bummer. So this is really great for non-subject specific extensions, or you can have one that's completely within your subject. So if you are art, you can have a choice board that's all art stuff that they can do. Actually, that would be really cool because you probably put a lot of different museums. I know there's a lot of virtual field trips to museums you could put on there. That would be really cool for students. All right. Were there any questions about that last kind of choice board for extension? Oh, awesome. That's good. All right. So I'm just going to go over kind of the basics of how to create a choice board. And I'm going to give you a tool that'll help you in your own creation of a choice board. So the first step you always want to do is just determine the purpose. So why are you creating this choice board? Is it something for the students to learn? Is it something that they're going to demonstrate their knowledge on, or is it an extension? Because that'll kind of change slightly how you want to create that choice board. Then you want to gather your resources. 3 to 9 tend to be the best amount. If you have more than that, it can be overwhelming. That finish early choice board that I showed you is very overwhelming for students that first time around. Having something where maybe you're only looking at row 3, everyone just look at row 3, pick something from row 3, and having them do that, giving them something very specific, or even talking with students like, hey, what do you like to do? And they're like, well, I like to draw. I'm like, let's check out the art box. But guiding students for something that big is helpful. 3 to 9 resources can be pretty self-explanatory. Once you get more than that, it might start to become a little too much. And you might have to give more guidance to students. And then you want to pick the kind of technology you're using. So all of the choice boards I showed you are either a Google Doc or a Google Slides, but you're not limited to just those. And then you can choose a template, or you can create your own. Some of these are templates that I found online. Some of these I created myself. When deciding how you want to display, most choice boards or learning menus tend to be things like Google Docs, Google Slide, or I've seen a few Google Sheets. We have one particular that I'm thinking of for Google Sheets, but that's not used very often. With Google Docs, it's very easy to organize. You can put tables within tables within tables within tables. We tell the students that if you see a table that is, or like a box that is colored in, that's where you're supposed to write. That's where you're answering your question. So just like on a worksheet, you have those lines and the students know I write on those lines. We have colored boxes. I type in the yellow colored box. I type in the green colored box. And then what we did, at least for distance learning, is each day was a different color just to help them. It's simple for students to use. They're familiar with it. They use it in pretty much every class, and everything's visible right there all in one place. A couple of cons with Google Docs is it's only linear in its organization. So you can't do more of like the mind mapping kind of thought bubbles, whatever you want, kind of like branching diagrams. It's very linear in its organization. It's, top to bottom. And then all options are visible, which can be a little overwhelming, much like you saw with the finish early choice board. That can be a little overwhelming, and it can be a little bit plain. With Google Slides, you do have that option to only have one thing visible. So you can create a slide that has all 9 resources right there, and that's all you need. Or you can do something like with that stress management choice board from earlier, where they have to click on it to go to a particular slide to get more information. So it's a little more freeform in its organization. It is definitely easier to decorate. And there's tons of different templates out there for slides in particular. It can be a little harder to navigate without instructions. So on that first, the stress management choice board, I had instructions in the middle that specifically told the students they need to click on the words. And then it's easier to make some mistakes, like forgetting to link to certain slides. It's just, if you're doing a lot of linking, it can be very easy to just skip over one on accident. And then for Google Sheets, you can organize tasks by tabs. In particular, what I'm thinking of at my site, we do science fair on Google Sheets. So each task of science fair is on a different tab that the students go through, and it's organized that way. Google Sheets also allows for conditional formatting, which was something that I saw got really popular over distance learning, especially with math teachers, where you'd have the equations and the students would type in an answer in the box, and you can actually program it that if they type in the right answer, it will color in certain squares off to the side. And they had to color in this picture by getting all their questions right. So that's really cool. I haven't played around too much with that, but that's a really cool feature that's in Google Sheets that's not available in the other ones. I've also seen people recreate crossword puzzles in Google Sheets. So the students would type in the little boxes, and you just make the columns really small to only fit a box, and outlined whichever boxes need to be filled in, and it looks just like a crossword puzzle that they can fill in digitally on Google Sheets, which is kind of cool. I haven't tried that out, but it's cool. Some cons is the biggest one is it doesn't check spelling automatically. You actually have to go in and click to check spelling before it'll check spelling. It doesn't give you the red squiggly lines like it would on slides or docs. So that is a big drawback, is teaching the students how to spell check with sheets. And then it is extremely limited in its decoration and its organization. So if you're kind of newer to choice boards or new to tech, I recommend docs and slides because you're most familiar with them and students are most familiar with them. But again, you're not limited to just those ones. Anything you can think of, you can turn into a choice board. You can use something like Google Sites, where students would go to your Google site that you created, and maybe it has different pages on that site for their different options. You can do something like Padlet and maybe having different columns or linking it, linking different things to the Padlet. You can do ThingLink, which again, is kind of, I'm not too familiar with that one, but I know you can link different things and kind of organize it that way. Adobe Spark. Yes, I can. Here, I will. Right now, I have the published version of the slides that are being linked. And then at the end, when you guys go to your work time in a couple minutes, I'm going to also post the link for the actual slides so you can see all the notes and stuff with all the examples linked. And then you can also use any graphics website like Canva, Google Drawing, or Pictochart to create a choice board that way as well. So where exactly can you find templates? There is Teachers Pay Teachers because they have everything, but they cost money, so I don't recommend that. Instead, you can just search choice board templates or learning menu templates, and you're going to find a ton of websites and blogs with free templates. You can also create your own, and I'm going to give you a couple resources to help you with that one. The basics of creating a template for Google Docs. All you really need is a title and a table. Put a resource in each of the boxes on your table, and that's really all you need. But you can add more if you'd like to. You can add pictures, GIFs, links, video, tutorials, whatever you need for that particular learning menu. For slides, I recommend just have a title slide that has each of the resources and then link it to a slide with the more information. Then you can customize with any pictures, fonts, page colors. You can use any templates from Slides Carnival or Slides Go to create your template if you want something that's really pretty and you don't have to do much work for it, which I'm all about. A couple of tips and tricks. First, focus on functionality. If it doesn't work, then it's not going to be of much use to your students. So focus on functionality before how pretty it looks. Use a pen and paper to map it out if you need to. I do that all the time. I usually have a notebook that I get at the beginning of the year, usually spiral, and then I will make notes on different assignments. I will jot things, I'll map things out, and then after I create it, I can just rip out the page and throw it away. So by the end of the year, the notebook is slowly no more. But I always map things out, especially when it comes to technology. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing old school before you bring in the new school. So I use paper, pencil, and I kind of map things out. I jot down notes, and I kind of figure out how I want the choice board to look before I even bring in a Google slide or a Google Doc. If you feel like you picked the wrong tech, feel free to change it. You aren't stuck with your first choice. I can't tell you how many times that I've started like, I'm just going to make a Google Doc choice board, and it just was not working. It was getting too cluttered, too overwhelmed, and I had to stop it and copy and paste everything over to a Google Slides, and then it worked out fine. So you aren't stuck with your first choice. Even if you spend a long time on it, you can just copy and paste it over to different tech of your choice. And always ask a friend or colleague to look it over for you. Have them click all the links, have them look at everything, and make sure everything's linked correctly and it works. I have one coworker next door to me that I will call all the time. I'll be like, I just sent you this. I need you to look at it. Does it make sense? And she'll look over it. And I often tell her, I need you to try and break it. So they just go in and they click and they try and figure out how to break it, essentially. And if they can't figure it out, that means the students shouldn't be able to figure it out, hopefully. So that's a good tip I would say for anything tech wise is send it to a friend or colleague, have them look over it and see if there's anything that goes wrong for them, because it's going to go wrong for your students that way. All right. So I do have a document that I'm going to post the link in just a moment, but I want to walk you through it. And then you'll have some sandbox time to start creating your own choice board. So this document is going to help you start processing what you want your choice board to look like. So you're going to determine the purpose. So is it for learning, demonstration, or extension? And again, I have the definitions linked here. I have those little icon organizer things that I made as well in case you're a visual learner. And then I have the link to all of the examples that I showed you. You can choose your standard or your topic. Again, what is your purpose? And then what is kind of the learning goal for this? And what is the end product? What are they going to do at the end? Are they all going to answer a Google form and everyone's going to have the same end product? Then you're probably making a choice board to learn. If you want them to be able to have a choice in what that end product is, maybe they can do a video or a slides or an infographic. Then you're looking at a choice board to demonstrate understanding. And if it's something for extension, maybe the end product is to just allow them time to explore. It's up to you in what your choice board is. Then you want to start gathering your resources. So any websites, articles, videos, interactives, blogs, whatever it is that you want the students to look at, you can start gathering them here and kind of determining what is the purpose. So what's the main idea that you want them to get out of that particular resource? Because again, if the resource doesn't fit, then there's a chance the student might not walk away understanding what you want them to understand if that's the one resource they end up looking at and it doesn't hit the target that you want them to know, then a student could walk out of class not meeting that target. So just make sure you have that purpose and make sure that all of your resources make sense. And then you can determine which technology you want to use, doc, slide, sheets, or if you have anything other. So if you wanted to, maybe you're really good at Canva and you want to make a Canva presentation, or maybe you're really good at Google Sites, you want to make a Google Sites, totally up to you, whatever you want. Again, if you are beginning, I recommend Google Doc or Google Slides as your ones to start with. If you're comfortable with that, if you want to challenge yourself more, you can try the others, but those are the two that I recommend. And then lastly, you want to either create your own template or you can find one. And this one, I just did a Google search and I found a ton of different blogs and articles that have choice boards, either as a Google Doc or as a Google Slide, linked right here. So all of these have one or more different choice boards to look at that you can make a copy of, and you can start right away creating your choice board. So there's tons of different ones. Or if you don't like any of those templates, you can always go to something like Slides Carnival that just has blank Google Slides templates, and you can just create your own. Slides Go as well is just like Slides Carnival, where you can create your own. I have noticed that they've done an update in the past couple of weeks where you can only download one template per day, and I don't like that. But that is an option. So if you find one really good one at Slides Go, you can download it. And then if you decide you don't like it, you got to wait till tomorrow to download another one. Kind of sucks. But Slides Carnival, absolutely amazing. That's where I found my stress management choice board, and I created the template myself. But that's really good for all sorts of slides templates. So I'm going to, let me copy this link. So I'm going to have you click that link, and it's going to have you make a copy of this choice board document. And you can start filling that out, start figuring some stuff out of how you want your choice board to look, and start creating one. So it's a little bit of sandbox time. So we have, about 10 minutes. So what I'm going to do while you're having your sandbox time, I'm actually going to post the link for the evaluation and for these slides, so you can download, make a copy, or add these slides to your drive if you wish. There we go. So I'm going to post the eval and the slides. I'm going to give you some time to work, or since we're kind of close to the end, we don't have a whole lot of sandbox time. I'm just going to stay on and answer any questions that we have, but make sure to fill out the eval and make sure to make a copy. You can start working on choice boards. If you want to start working these last 10 minutes and I can help you and answer questions, that's fine. Or if you want to fill out the eval and head out, you're more than welcome to as well. But I have the slides and the eval posted. If you have any questions, you can email me at any time. If you want to send me a choice board and have me look at it, you're more than welcome to do that as well. My email is on the screen. So at this time, make sure you have the copies of those resources, fill out the evaluation, and then you are free to log out, or if you'd like to stay and ask some questions, I'll be here to answer questions. And we'll end it there, and have a happy weekend, happy Friday, and enjoy the last week before school starts next week. So enjoy this last week next week. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you.